someone here for the town? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Peter McConaty, Town Engineer. I'm here to speak of any questions relating to the survey and the submission of the A&R plan. The property is basically the property is lots 11 and lots 12, Blacksmith Shop Road. Land-coded parcels. Basically, the property is surrounded on one side by the state highway, Route 28, and other land court parcels. The only non-land court parcel is another lot on the Blacksmith Shop Road side that's also owned by the town of Falmouth.
Okay. Are there any questions from the planning board?
What is this plan doing? It is combining or separating?
Would you like to address?
If I could.
What?
It's a perimeter plan of lots 11 and 12. It shows their perimeter.
They already exist.
Correct.
So it's not doing anything except that.
There's no combining or no dividing of these lots. Any questions?
Not here.
Okay.
There's nothing to question if there's not any division going on. We don't
Right.
have anything to discuss, really, right?
Okay.
Is this just confirming what already exists?
Correct. Correct.
Yes, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what they're doing here, and there's no way I can vote to approve this plan. I just don't think it's right. I think they should have been dealt with a long time ago. I think this is just repositioning, repackaging to try to keep what shouldn't have been approved in the first place going and preserving, I can't put my name to it. What I read in the paper is that that is subject to the planning board approval, and I don't really think this is the planning board approving this. I think it's the town maneuvering and trying to put our stamp of approval on it, and I can't vote for approval of this, and I don't think our approval is necessary. But I think that the selectmen and the people that are moving this forward have to stand on their own 2 feet and not put us in front and say we approve this plan, when they never brought any of the further plans to this in front of us, and at this late date, put it in front of us for our approval and put our name on it. So I will not vote for this.
Okay. I'm not here to speak to the process. I'm just.
Mr. Chair, through you, can I ask?
Oh, wait a minute. I got everybody wanting to talk here. Mr. McConaty, can you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm not here to speak to the process and the history of the project, of this project. I'm just here, we were asked to file an A&R
Okay.
property
And
plan.
point of order, that's all we're here to look at is, is this subject to approval? But I would like to ask the planner for a question as to the history of this. I do note that you have 2 separate lots and you have installations that aren't buildings but are basins that seem to cross lot lines. And is there any kind of anomaly in that?
I'll answer your question in a moment, Rich. I just want to make sure the board understands, based on Jim's testimony, you're actually not approving anything. You endorse a plan that approval is not required. So I just want to make sure the board understands that distinction. Does anything?
I will change my word approve to endorse. I'm with you on that. I understood that. I misspoke. But I understand clearly what's going on.
Like just finish. Just make sure the board as a collegial body understands what it's doing, Jim. That's what it's doing.
I misspoke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Secondly, the only pertinent dimension on a plan brought before you for your endorsement, approval not required, is frontage. Now, there are other structures, non-structures, whatever might be on the plan, are of no concern to the board. That may be used for other purposes, whether they're health or other town boards or whatever. The pertinent dimension is frontage, but because we're not dividing anything here, it's not a subdivision by definition. Well, it's your conscience, but I'm going to make sure you are technically aware of what you're doing.
I would like to make a point of order. Thank you for that explanation. I would like to make a point of order here that, as with any applicant, the reason why a plan is brought before us, such as this, where it is a true A&R, is not pertinent to our discussions. It's not within our jurisdiction. and it is improper to consider such issues. And I can tell you, if this were a private developer bringing this plan before us, wanting us to confirm that, and we would operate on the basis of Jim's comment, we would be sued, and rightly so.
Other comments? Jim?
Well, you might be right, Richard, and I'll defer because you're a lawyer, but I believe if we do nothing and we do not affirm this, that it happens automatically. And that is what the intention is to happen anyway, just like what happened with the developer. And there's really no need for me to vote endorsement to this plan when I am opposed to it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Curry mentioned that the criteria about frontage on the roads, each of the parcels does have adequate frontage if you look at the layout. So that goes away. Any other comments, questions, or whatever? Yes, Doug?
So if we vote endorsement of the approval not required, are we somehow endorsing the action, or just confirming that we realize that we have no jurisdiction?
I believe that's what you're saying, is that you're confirming that we agree that there's no subdivision going on here.
And it was adequate frontage.
There's adequate frontage, and that's basically it. Recall, especially for you who are new to the planning board, that the state of Massachusetts is the only state in the union that has approvals not required. And it's been a thorn in our side ever since I've been on the planning board, and it raises issues such as Jim brings up, and your hands are pretty much tied. It's not a fun thing to have to live with, but every town in the state of Massachusetts has to live with it. So, any other comments or questions? Yes, Bob?
So, could I look at this as just a bit of housekeeping? Is that essentially what we're doing here, just tidying up some paperwork, or?
The plan that confronts you is stands on its own merits. You don't have to worry about anything other than a very simple question, is whether the plan to fix a subdivision. As the discussion has unfolded here, the plan obviously does not fix a subdivision. That's all you've done.
The newspaper, if you read the articles in the newspaper, you understand that what it does is it locks in the zoning, the existing zoning for, I believe, 1 year. I think that's what, isn't that correct?
I'd be careful here. Yes, it does. That's a zoning law.
Right.
But the question in front of the board, an instant question in front of the board right now, is whether the plan depicts a subdivision under the subdivision control law.
Right.
That's the question in front of the board at the moment.
Right.
In the background, there are other considerations. It freezes certain zoning issues. It freezes certain Board of Health regulations. It does other things. I just want to make sure the board understands that the instant question before you is whether or not the plan depicts a subdivision. And I know, and I can sense that for some members, that's a very difficult thing to do. Fortunately, as Ralph has indicated, since 1953, this process has been in place. And that's just the way the legislature has voted it, and that's what I have to report to you.
Yeah. So, yes, Jim?
I understood all that, and I also want to make it clear that I understand the people that are moving this and why they're moving it, and that no matter how this board votes to endorse this plan or not endorse this plan, in 21 days, it goes ahead, and they do whatever they want anyway. And that is the reason why I can't endorse this plan, because they're going to do it anyway, and that's it.
Well, I believe the 21-day rule is if we don't act on it. If we don't act on it, if we should table this
Right.
in 21 days, I believe it's automatically approved. That's the way I read it. Yes, Rich?
Mr. Chair, I put process ahead, what we're elected to do, ahead of outside political considerations that have nothing to do with what the business before us is. We are confined to the question, does this depict a subdivision, yes or no? Is there adequate frontage, yes or no? To say we're not going to act on this out of some kind of political issue that has nothing to do with what is before us, I think is irresponsible, and it's not within the purview of us as a commission, as an elected body of this town, to make any such political statement. And I think that is frankly out of order.
Okay, well, we are not a commission, we are a board.
I corrected myself.
Okay.
I used to be on the Concom.
I know. Any other comments or questions on the endorsement of this, this proposal? Let's see, I need a motion to either endorse this or table it, one or the other.
I will move that it be endorsed.
All right, do I have a
That's
second?
routine matter.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Motion carries 6-1.
5-1.
5-1.
That's all.
I'm sorry, excuse me, 5-1. Thank you, Mr. McConery.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discussion. We have 2 items to discuss tonight for special Springtown meeting zoning articles. The first one is the medical marijuana treatment centers moratorium.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the board to take the second item out of order, unless folks are here to talk about marijuana.
Okay, all right, okay, then, all right, I'll need a motion to take that out of order.
Second.
Second discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, then we'll speak about the wind energy system prohibition. Just as some background for the audience and for folks watching on television. The planning board has revised the wind turbine bylaw that was presented at Fall Town meeting and is resubmitting that for Springtown meeting. And if it should fail again, then the old windmill bylaw will then take place because the 2-year moratorium will be up on wind turbine installations. So, the planning board has asked Mr. Curry to develop an article that will address that particular situation. And the article that is presented here tonight for the planning board to discuss is in front of you, to see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 240 of the Falmouth Code and to delete all the following sections and delete windmills in its entirety. In other words, the windmills would not be allowed in any of these districts by writers by special permit, except to be allowed pursuant to the exemptions of Massachusetts general law.
One technical correction on that paragraph, that should be section 3 of 40A, not section 6.
Section 3 of 40A, not C, but 3.
It should read section 3, not section 6.
Section 3C, 40.
Oh, section 3.
Section 3, chapter 40A, general.
Okay, section 3, 40A. Okay, thank you.
Not section
Chair, may I
6.
ask?
Sorry about that.
Okay,
Can I have a question?
yes, Richard.
Brian, will you please explain for us what those exemptions are?
Section 3 exempts certain agricultural uses, certain religious uses, certain not-for-profit educational uses, certain residential homes for handicapped. It goes through certain exemptions a town cannot compel a special permit for, or must allow to move forward if it can convince the town that it's advancing, say, its educational mission. There was an objection raised at the last town meeting. I simply put it in there to make sure it's clear that anyone who can claim an exemption, anyone, not just an agricultural exemption, but anyone who can claim a state exemption is free to do so, notwithstanding the language inside.
So what this would do is, if the article that we're submitting for wind turbines is defeated, and then this article would then be entertained at the special town meeting, and it would then basically say that no windmills are allowed in town at all, except under this exemptions. Rich?
Follow-up question, if we pass our much worked on bylaw at the Springtown meeting, what effect, if any, does it have on the exemptions in section 348?
Specific exemption, I think a categorical exemption, somewhere in the new bylaw that addresses that issue. But I'd like the board to focus on this article first.
No, what I want, I want to just be clear on, I understand that.
Okay.
If we pass our bylaw,
The article in the annual passes.
to what extent are the height restrictions, say, applicable to those exempted entities?
I can address that for you, Rich, but that's the annual town meeting. This article is for the special town.
I understand that, and this is a fallback that we should pass. I'm beyond that. I just want to know, in terms of, what difference does it make, if any, for these exemptions, whichever one of these passes?
Well, remember that the exemptions are for the use. Certain religious or educational or agricultural or housing uses are exempt. It doesn't give you a carte blanche exemption from dimensional regulations. The exempt use then has to show that the reasonable regulations as applied will interfere with their exempt use of their property or any other statutory or constitutional protections they may have, such as religious or educational.
So that if we pass the bill that sets height limitations, setback limitations, and so forth,
Right.
many, if not all of those limitations will still apply at the building permit
Yes.
level,
Correct.
but won't require a special permit for the use.
Correct.
So this is a fallback, but it is not a very good option, because then somebody who could come in and make a credible case that they are worshiping the wind god Aeolus.
It's back there.
Every application will be viewed on its own merits. If
I mean,
you demonstrate that you're advancing an educational mission or you're advancing a religious belief, we take them all very seriously. Height restrictions,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's automatic. It means you have to make some sort of credible argument that you are protected either by the Constitution or by certain general statutes from the imposition of those dimensional regulations.
But with this, and without the bylaw that we're trying to get passed at the annual, we have no restriction on those things.
Regardless, you have no restrictions on these things. The state has intervened, the federal government has intervened. You may impose a reasonable dimensional regulations to the extent that it doesn't curtail the First Amendment freedom of religion. I think that Dedham instance, we've never had the ability to have a carte blanche imposition of dimensional regulations on exempt uses. So, just to make sure you understand.
But without the article that we want to pass at the annual, what dimensional regulations, if any, would there be if that doesn't get passed?
Pass or nay.
What?
If it doesn't pass, there's nothing, Rich. I'm not following.
So there's no dimensional regulations that we could impose on these exempted uses then, if we don't get this passed at the annual.
Regardless of what you pass, whether at this annual town meeting or at this special town meeting, if someone can claim a religious or educational or agricultural exemption, it could be that those dimensional regulations must be relaxed. Am I following your question?
Could be, yes.
Could be, right. Regardless of what's on the books, either today, tomorrow or the next day. If I could, Rev, the question that's in front of the board instantly at this moment, without getting into what may or may not happen at the annual town meeting, is to an article for the special town meeting. That's sort of a contingency. Does the board want to have this sort of article at the special town meeting should the annual town meeting article fit? And so essentially negate the use throughout the community, except for those exempted under that section of the general statute. That's the question I'd like the board to focus on. Typically, then we can talk about some of the practical applications of any bylaw. Does the board want to move forward under the special town meeting with at least a plan B, should you not gather the requisite two-thirds vote at the end of the time? Let's see if we can cross that bridge.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is if our revised bylaw doesn't pass, then we are going to take off the books the opportunity for people to use the old windmill bylaw,
Ding,
right? Okay, so everybody understands that? Okay,
we will have no bylaw.
all right. Now,
But I think the height limitations would go then revert to
35
5
feet.
feet in a residential zone. You know,
yeah,
35.
building,
35, whatever it
a
might be.
building.
And someone will have to indicate that they go through that process.
Okay, now, also, let me remind everyone that there's always the possibility when you have the first night of a town meeting as the regular town meeting, then the second night is the special town meeting, and then they go back to the regular town meeting on the third night if it is not completed. But our positions in this situation are good because we wouldn't worry about this coming before ours, because on the agenda for the regular town meeting, planning board issues come right up in the beginning. So our revised bylaw will be entertained 99.9% sure before this will come up, okay? So we don't have to worry about that happening.
Another question
Yeah,
for
Rich.
Brian. Does this require, does this require a two-thirds vote?
Yes.
So, we could be in a position where we don't get two-thirds for the annual, and we don't get two-thirds for this, then what happens?
And the old windmill bylaw will be sitting right there on the books.
But people have spoken. But they'll have at least these opportunities to offer
So it would not be a smart idea to turn down the one that we're proposing that imposes reasonable restraints on this.
I don't exist.
Well, just want to make that point, that
Is
would
this
not
in
be a
order?
smart idea.
If you want to, yeah, you can't,
Don't put me down.
you can't campaign for this.
I think this is out of order.
Yeah, okay. I'll accept that. I think it is out of order.
I
Okay.
apologize.
All right. So I'm looking for more comments on what's in front of us as to whether or not we want to submit this article on the special town meeting to delete windmills from our bylaw if it's necessary, if to be voted on by the town meeting. So, other comments? Yes, Paul?
If on the regular town meeting, the turbine bylaw passes, when we get to the special town meeting, will this be moot and closed?
Yes, we will recommend indefinite postponement on this. Right.
Just one point of
Sure.
clarification for the board. Let's say the town meeting votes on Monday night to approve the bylaw, then my recommendation to the board would be then to indefinitely postpone this article. It's not automatic. Someone could bring this up on a special town meeting floor and push for its passage, in which case, you go back to no bylaw at all, period.
Or the old
That's
one.
the risks you run.
Yeah,
Just make sure you understand.
life is not without risk. Doug?
Clear form.
I don't understand that. So ours passes on the first night.
Yeah.
This passes on the second night? this wipes out ours?
It's it's on the table.
Because this seems,
Probabilities are greater than zero. I'm not going to tell you what probabilities are.
because
Make sure you know
What's happened?
Procedurally, it could happen.
this seems almost like similar language as what's in our bylaw pertaining to deleting the windmill section anyway. So it's almost like it's just reaffirming a part of our bylaw rather than,
What happens, Doug, is say, on Monday night, Article 2 passes, and that's the bylaw in its entirety. What happens in that article is you delete the old, insert the new. At the special town meeting, it stands on its own. It would be that, and I have a procedural remedy for that, but I just want to make sure you understand. You get to Tuesday night. Tuesday night, this article, the probabilities are greater than zero, passes. You're back to no bylaw. Then when you go back into the annual, there might be some parliamentary things you can do to reconsider the previous article, get it back. But I'm just making sure the board understands that when you put an article on town meeting warrant, your recommendation is only that, a recommendation. You could pass Monday night at the annual, Tuesday night, this could pass too. I've seen weirder things happen at town meetings. Just make sure the board understands what could happen. But I'm recommending you put this on, for sure. I've been mentioning that for a few weeks now. Put this on, have a hearing, have it there for the people to decide. I think it's very important.
Yeah, Paul?
If I remember correctly, at the town meeting last time, the vote for the bylaw did not pass. A couple of nights later, Vice Chair Mary Patka Foot explained what another article was about following the state law. I thought she was very effective in her explanation. In fact, a subject came up about revisiting the initial vote, which was not passed by the town meeting members. But I think if we're going to be doing this sort of thing, we have to be very clear in our explanation so people understand what's going on. Because many times we have two competing articles, and it's not clear what they mean, and the voters sometimes don't vote the way you would think they would vote. And that
Right.
happened with the windmills in particular.
One opportunity to do that is in the precinct meetings. Rich?
Okay, I'm not sure how this would work or if it would work, but if I were drafting a contract or something, I would put in language that would deal with the contingencies such as that, and I would say something like this. Windmills, as defined, are not allowed in any zoning district, either by right or a special permit, except as may be allowed pursuant to exemptions specified under Section 3, Section 48, and/or under, refer back to the annual meeting article, if enacted. That won't fly, why not? I'm not,
That's a, what do they call that?
Yeah, I would just...
Disclaimer?
I don't mean...
Disclaimer, yeah.
I would just offer this as it is. Make sure the board fully understands when you offer an indefinite postponement recommendation. You say Monday night, the article passes, this comes up Tuesday night, it's not an automatic thing with your recommendation about indefinite postponement. There could be arguments made, the town meeting could decide something else. It's their right. I just want to make sure you're aware of that the indefinite postponement is not a mandatory thing.
Doug?
You can't withdraw the
Oh, sorry.
article. It stands there ready for debate.
Doug?
is the, so we would be then deleting Article 34, windmills, in the entirety. Is our wind turbine bylaw also numbered Article 34?
Right, so that's correct.
Okay,
say
so that's
Monday night
part of the
fails.
problem with it.
Right. Say Monday night fails, you take the existing bylaw, you delete it, you essentially say they're not allowed anywhere in the community. It acts as more than a moratorium. It's a elimination of the use, can only be reinstated upon a future vote of town.
I see, it's the fact that we're switching one for the other that locks us into the,
The 34, yeah, just where the code works, the coding system works, it's the section.
we
that's the
can't just
article.
pick a different number, huh?
It's town clerks, and they're pretty picky guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, other comments, Paul?
I'm a little concerned about the way this process is going, because the argument we've been making about the new bylaw is that if you don't vote for this bylaw, it reverts back to the old windmill bylaw. And that's a very good selling point to the town meeting members, that if you don't do this, you have limited protection under the old windmill turbine. So we're going to go and say, okay, here's a new bylaw, we encourage you to pass this for that reason. And then we come along a couple of nights later and say, oh, by the way, we're going to do an end run because this didn't happen, we're going to do something else. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And maybe you could explain why I should feel more comfortable than I do.
I would couch it in this terms, Paul.
Sorry?
I would couch it this way. You're presenting to the town a far superior alternative that you should be able to feel comfortable voting. Not, if you don't vote this, it reverts to the old. I think that's not the way to approach it. I think the approach should be, we're offering you something far better than you have today. And if you like it, great. If you don't, it's their right. They can vote any way they want. I wouldn't, in all seriousness, put any kind of, that's the approach, I'm sorry, that's the approach I would offer to the town meeting if I were speaking to them in April. And I would recommend you do the same thing. I wouldn't put a gun to their heads and say, if you don't vote this, you're going to get that. I've seen that type of approach fail any number of times. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, that would be a positive approach rather than a negative. Go
We
ahead.
said that last time. If you don't vote for the new bylaw, it reverts back to the other one. We've done that.
And look what happened. Don't do it.
Yeah, Bob?
Well, I think doing it this way, it would be lightning striking twice. If they vote down Article 2, the first one, the new bylaw, it would revert back to the old windmill bylaw. They would have to strike this down as well for it to revert back to that. So I think the likelihood of that happening isn't great. So I think this is a good backup for us because, like I said, lightning would have to strike twice in order for the old bylaw to kick back in.
Jim?
I think this is a very good bylaw, and I think we should approve it now, and we probably should have approved it a long time ago.
You mean the article?
The article.
Yeah, right.
Article to change the bylaw, excuse me.
Okay, other comments? Rich?
We are a planning board, which means we are supposed to be looking towards the future of the town, and I am just very reluctant to endorse anything that categorically excludes any particular kind of use, especially when it is an alternative energy use. I see that not being a very responsible position for the board to take. Now, if I could be confident that we were going to pass the annual article, I would have, and that having done that, that couldn't be undone by this article, I would be more comfortable. But since it could be undone by this article, especially if it happens on two different nights, then we would result in a situation where we cannot have any kind of wind generation at all. And to me, that would be backward, totally against sound planning for future energy needs. You know, oil isn't cheap now, and it isn't going to get any cheaper.
Bob?
Well, I think, I understand what Richard is saying, but I have confidence in the bylaw that we wrote. We heard a lot of comments, we had hearings on it. I think we did our due diligence in making changes, and I think the changes we made will be acceptable to town meeting this time. I think people just had a few certain things that they didn't like in that, and they knew they had the extra inning to go with this town meeting. So I think that's why they kicked it back, and I'm feeling confident that it will pass this time. So I'm not really that worried.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Rich, that we have done planning in this process. I think we've done a lot of planning in this process. We spent a lot of time on this, well over almost 2 years, and working on it. And so we are presenting, I think as Brian said, we are presenting something far superior to what is on the books right now.
At
Far-
the annual,
far-
absolutely.
Far superior. And if you want, if they don't want something that's far superior, then they don't accept this, then they're accepting, and they're willing to live with something that's far inferior. And I don't think that the town is going to have that mindset. I don't think they will. But we'll all have an opportunity to speak at the precinct meetings, and Pat will be presenting to town meeting, and I'm confident that our process, including this article, is the right way to go. So I'm going to, if I don't hear any more comments, then I'm going to entertain a motion to present this article on the special town meeting, and that we will have, we will have hearings on it and public comment on it, and then we will go from there. I'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a move, and I'll take a second from you, Bob, is that okay? Okay, further discussion on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. All right, thank you, Brian, for your work on that. The next, can you give the audience a rough idea when we will have a hearing on that? Would that be
I don't know.
sometime in
For the
May?
special
I mean,
I've got
in
my pen. I wanted to
February?
change this.
Yeah.
This is-
I don't know.
Okay.
More than likely in February, but I don't have a date.
Okay, all right, it'll be February then. Mhm. All right, the second, I need a motion then to resume to the
So moved.
original agenda. Second,
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. All right, we will now then entertain the medical marijuana treatment center moratorium. We have a draft of an article that Brian has put in front of us here, and so I'd ask Brian to speak to this article.
But the board hasn't seen this before, but I'm going to ask you to put this on a special town meeting warrant. We've received a lot of phone calls, maybe up to a dozen phone calls, inquiries about whether or not people can now, what can they do under the current zoning bylaw when it comes to medicinal marijuana and retail sales thereof. And we don't have a good answer for them. They're asking questions such as, can I have a home occupation to grow marijuana to supply these treatment centers? I don't know. Can you sell these retail in any business zone? We don't know. Can I open a store in a business zone or whatever it might be? We don't know, is the answer we're giving them, and that's the honest answer, we don't know. Now, the question passed 2-1 here in the town with regards to making medicinal marijuana, at least authorized under state law. It's still a federal offense. Many towns, because there's a lot of confusion out there right now as to what exactly you can or cannot do, some towns have outright banned them. Other towns, this article is drafted based on an article from the town of Burlington, have said, well, just everybody hold on, we're supposed to get guidance from the state come summertime with regards to how these treatment centers operate, where they can locate, what the procedures are going to be. So that's the recommendation I'm giving here, is that because there are a lot of unknowns out there with regards to how this functions, the devil's in the details, we want to be able to address the vote of the electorate 2-1, the question passed. But we don't want to put in place a situation where, you can actually offer this within there are certain instances where you probably don't want this type of activity near schools or playgrounds or whatever it might be. So we're going to just say, time out. Let's take a look at this once we have some guidance from the state. And ask them, and I know it's short notice, but we sent this out to you back on the 9th. Have a look at it. It essentially places a moratoria on these things, I believe for 1 year? Yes, till April
2014.
2014. And by then, we'll have an opportunity to say, all right, these are uses allowed only in business 2 districts by special permit, and have those criteria in place such as we have for other uses that are protected under our Constitution, but we can impose certain reasonable dimensional regulations from schools. That's what this article does.
Okay. I called Brian and discussed it with him briefly, and up at the top, there it says draft number 2. That's his own personal numbering system, and has nothing to do with the fact that we haven't seen this before. So that, you can just disregard the number 2 there. Just so everybody, if you haven't had a chance to look at our, at 240, it's under Article 2, Building Permit Moratorium, and it's a little confusing because the word windmills follows that, making a person think that the moratorium applies just to windmills. And the only reason that, the way I looked at it was, the only reason that the word windmills was after the word moratorium was because that was the only existing moratorium at the time, okay? When 240 was published, so you don't get confused on that, because the moratorium would apply to any building permit. Rich?
Yeah, I think my first reaction to this was, why a year? I think, obviously we need to get a handle on it, but is it the case that the state is going to be promulgating some standards that we will want to adopt, and that is why we were waiting a year rather than just going to the fall?
I went to the next fall town meeting because, like it or not, the state is notorious for being late. We get it in August after the close of the warrant, so I'm buying some time. Hopefully we get it in June, like they say we'll get it. We'll have enough time to digest it, offer something for the November town meeting. That's my goal, but...
And that will override the moratorium.
Right, but you always want 2
Okay,
town meetings.
okay, so that's just a little bit extra. All right, now, one other little piece of advice. If anybody calls you, even if we pass a bylaw, the first thing you have to let them know is, no matter what the state says, and no matter what we says, if the U.S. attorney up in Boston gets a feather in his cap about this,
I understand.
you can be prosecuted. I think you have to tell people that, so they don't come back at you and saying, this is...
We don't give legal advice, we just tell them what we
No,
want
that's
in the
just a
bylaw.
disclaimer, that we're not,
But I understand what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, just protect the town on that.
Understood. But this is what this article does. It essentially puts it into the warrant. You'll have to hold a hearing. It's amendable. As you know, the article just puts in front of the town meeting, what they're going to be talking about. But at least gives them an opportunity to say yes or no. I've had some phone calls from town meeting members and whatnot, but unfortunately, because we only have 2 a year, I thought it'd be prudent to at least have something for the special town meeting, let them decide.
And it would be a 2/3 vote,
It'd be a 2/3 vote.
because it's a zoning bylaw. Yeah, Doug, if you had something that you
I
wanted.
didn't see windmills in mine, so I guess it must have got revised.
Not mine either.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's
You
fine,
don't
yeah.
see what?
There's no mention of windmills in mine.
No, I said, when you look at your copy of your 240, and you go to chapter 2, Article 2, right up in the beginning.
Oh, in the book.
And in the book,
It's gonna say
you will see the word windmills
I got you.
under, following this thing about moratorium, okay? And that it's deceiving, because it makes you think it applies only to windmills, when in fact, the moratorium can apply to anything, really. Okay.
The reason this is draft number 2 is because we had that in there, delete the word windmills from building permit moratorium and insert this following, but everyone found it too confusing.
Yeah.
So we just left it alone.
Yes, Paul?
I was going to raise the same issue that Richard raised. I don't know what the magical date is for April 30th, and I understand what you're saying, but what we're trying to do, as I understand it, is have enough time to take guidance from the Commonwealth. Is that likely to happen in that time frame, given the fact that we have federal and state laws in conflict?
I don't know, Paul.
So,
I'm hoping, yes, but, that's why I'm offering a year's moratorium to give you at least 2 town meetings. Because this could come in very late from the state, or it could come in in June. It's supposed to be here in June.
What's supposed to be here,
It's a state guide on medical marijuana facilities. But if it's not, say it gets here in August or September, well then, it'd be tough to have something detailed for the November town meeting. Because we're probably looking at setbacks and zoning districts and whatnot. Hopefully it's here in time.
That guidance will come out of which office in the state?
Department of Public Health.
Okay, so, all right,
Public
that, because to me, that's what this is all about, is public health, and I'm not comfortable dealing with it without a lot more information, including some comments from our own Department of Health. Jim?
I find it strange that we're actually debating a drug, whether or not, I think it's a Board of Health issue, and I just don't see how it's a planning issue on this. I mean, what happens if we substitute another drug in there, and we're saying whether there should be a moratorium on it or not? I believe we'd have to hear from the Board of Health first, listen to their recommendations, and before we even do anything with this, I think it's premature.
Jim, it's a zoning issue, just like.
Wait a minute, Rich. Hang on, were there somebody else want to speak? Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Just like it would be if there's somebody wanted to have a moratorium on shooting ranges that could carry, that could access, Bushmaster-type semi-automatic weapons until we could get a handle on where could these be permissibly allowed.
So what is your point?
That it's a zoning issue. That there is a public health aspect to it, but there are other circumstances regarding this particular substance that gives us some pause, that gives a lot of people some pause as to where we should be allowing this. For example, do we want to have these clinics located within 500 feet of a school? Would we want to limit them, to exclude them from residential neighborhoods and allow them only in certain business neighborhoods? I mean, it's a zoning question. Quite apart from the issue of the public health aspect of it, in fact, we're not even getting into whether, as a matter of public health, it is legitimate use. The state has said it is, our voters have said it is, so let's do it and zone for it. And as Brian said, he's getting calls, and he doesn't know what to tell people, so let's give him an answer.
So, Brian, you're saying that this is pretty much a rubber stamp of what the town of Burlington did?
I've changed their language somewhat.
All right, but they did it through, they did it through zoning?
They did, every town that has addressed this so far has done it through zoning.
Done it through zoning, okay. Okay, yes, Bob?
I think it's a necessary step, because if the state comes down in June and says this is what people can do, and it's something that we don't want, or we don't want to see happen, we'd be stuck. So I think this is a good first step, because I think it is good planning for us to be able to look at something and not have it shoved down our throats, so that we can take our time and make the right decisions for this town. The right decision may be to just ban them altogether. Who knows? I mean, I've trouble with the conflict between the federal and the state government with this.
Yeah.
I could get a long discussion about that, but that's not what's before us.
Right.
No, I know.
What's
Okay.
before us is simply, how can we deal with the public inquiries?
Now, we will have, if we move to present this article on the special town meeting, we will have hearings on this.
Yes.
And so that will be, we will definitely want to, at those hearings, invite input from our Board of Health. I'm assuming that that's what we would want to do, and possibly the police department. Yes,
It's important to
Rich?
dispel any notion that this is anti-medical marijuana. It's not. If anything, it's trying to make it work in a sensible way, and that's what we want to do, is we want to take the existing law and make sure that it works appropriately. So it's not, and we can't do that unless we have time to work out a reasonable set of regulations under the zoning bylaw.
Well, the town voted to accept the use of medical marijuana, did it not?
2 to 1.
So, right today, what are the rules for doing any of this? There aren't any, correct?
Correct.
And so, there's nothing to stop someone out there today for doing whatever they want to do regarding the legal use of medical marijuana.
I don't know.
It's the federal law.
Except the federal law.
Well, the federal law only applies to federal land, doesn't it?
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, growing it, yeah, growing it is what I meant. Yeah,
Well, like I
okay.
said, we could get into a whole lot of issues about states,
Okay.
real states' rights and things like
Well,
that, but we're not.
This,
That's not
okay.
our business. Our business is,
all right, so, anyway, right now, there's no rules to the ballgame, okay? So this is going to be, this is saying, we're calling timeout for the ballgame. We're gonna get some information from the state, and then also input from our own community, and the
it's
Board
not
of
a-
Health and the Police Department, whoever else wants to chime in.
It's not a permitted use in Falmouth until we get a handle
Yeah.
on how to cite these.
Okay, so this would take effect, the day after town meeting, is it? Is it
It would take effect,
April 1st?
no, it would take effect on the date the first publication of the public hearing is published in the newspaper. It'd be retroactive.
It would be retroactive? Really? Oh. That's interesting. Yes, Jim?
Mr. Chairman, I just question, if the state comes down and passes a law, does our bylaw supersede the state's making it legal or illegal? Or does the state law take precedent?
The answer to your question is yes and yes, yes and no, I'm sorry. It could be that the state sets a floor. You have to have at least 2 medical marijuana treatment facilities in your town. You must allow 2. We couldn't come back and say, no, we're only going to allow 1. We might have a bylaw that says, well, we'll allow 3 or 4, if you like these. But the state would set at least a floor or a ceiling. You couldn't require a medical marijuana treatment facility to be more than 1,000 feet from a church. So our bylaw sets that, is set at that ceiling. We might say, okay, 1,000 is good, but we might say, 500 is okay with us. But we couldn't go outside the parameters set by the state.
Thank you.
Other comments on the proposal of this article for special town meeting on medical use of marijuana?
I've got
If-
a lot, but they wouldn't be germane to this discussion. so.
Okay. If not, then I'll entertain an article, one way or the other, to present this article to the fall, special town meeting of this
I
year.
move it.
Got a motion? And a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think it's a very important issue about this medical marijuana, but it raises a fundamental issue in town here that I don't know where we are on it, but it has a similar impact, and that's sober houses. Is there any update that we can talk about on how that is being addressed here in the community?
Yes. I have spoken to the Director of Human Services about this, and also to Brian.
Interrupt for a moment, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not on your agenda.
I know
Yeah,
it's not on the agenda.
Neither was this.
was-
This popped up without being brought up in discussion. It
Well,
just showed up on the agenda.
Well, it's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
You're right.
It's on the agenda, but if it's not on the agenda, you're talking about sober houses at this point.
Yeah, that's-
The
Oh, you're right.
The
Absolutely
agenda
right.
is set typically.
This was published, excuse me.
with the concurrence of the chairman.
Well, perhaps at the
Right now,
next
it's not
meeting,
on-
we can have an
under new
update of
business,
that,
yes. I'm just
because
trying to-
I think it's related.
Well, it
It's
is
an
in some
impact on the
respect.
community,
It is in
and
some
there's a lot
respect.
going on that
Yeah.
people don't know.
Bring that up at new
Ask for
business or
another
something that you
I'm
want to
just asking
discuss
the board to
soon,
bring that up on the
then
new
it'll
business
get on the
for
agenda.
another agenda.
Paul, why don't we do this? We'll put an update on sober houses on the agenda for our next meeting.
That'd be terrific.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Releases, there aren't any releases, are there, Brian? No. Committee reports, any reports from any of the committees? Jim?
Just to have an idea that we've discussed on the Local Comprehensive Plan Committee, and it's on its very early stages. It's one of the issues we've been talking about and meeting with many other groups in town is the lack of planning that's going on relating to transportation. And there is no transportation board. And so what I suggested that, because it is so interrelated to the planning, and to not have transportation, that we consider setting up a subcommittee of this board that could deal with transportation. Right now, they're not allowed to meet, they don't have a quorum, they don't fill any of the ability to have their own board. I did contact Frank Duffy and asked him what he thought about this idea, and he said if the rest of the board members agreed that it would be a way to get some planning going on transportation. I also contacted the existing members, what's left of the old transportation board, and they said they'd be willing to serve as a subcommittee to this group and actually start doing some work on dealing with transportation issues. I don't think we should always do this, but right now, I think as far as the planning of the town, to not deal with this is this very serious issue, and it's kind of a Band-Aid approach to do it. We have 3 previous committee members, I believe Dr. Gross I spoke with, and he talked to the others, and they are willing to serve, and we could have a group act as a subcommittee to this group to at least start dealing with and bringing to the fore some of the planning issues relating to transportation that's been ignored by the town and our other boards. And it comes up time and time again in our subcommittee meetings on the local comprehensive plan and taking a long-range view, and it keeps coming up, oh, what are we doing about transportation? And the other boards in the town have not seen fit to do anything about it, so I thought I would just come up with this idea and see what this board thought about it.
Okay, sounds good. Some history that, since I've been on the board, and Rich, maybe you can chime in on this too, is that the planning board has had people represent it in different capacities before. So there is some precedent for that. But it hasn't, to my knowledge, we've never had anybody form a subcommittee to represent us or to deal with these issues. And so I think it would be a little different ballgame. Rich, can you recall anything like that?
No, not at all.
Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, for instance, we had people that agreed to represent, in fact, we still do have somebody from Webner, I believe, is representing us in some capacity, aren't they?
And the Coastal Pond Management.
Coastal Pond okay, let me just see if that's... Well, we used to have Ken Foreman, who was a previous planning board member, represent us on the Nutrient Management Committee, which no longer exists. Coastal Pond Management, that was somebody from Webner, I believe. It's still, yes. Doug?
Is it necessary that they be somewhat formed into a group to work with us, or couldn't they just come as citizens and advise us of their knowledge?
Well, I don't know how we'd structure it. I mean, it's a new ballgame here. I was thinking that that one of the possibilities would be for us to form our own subcommittee made up of members of this board to deal with transportation, if we could find I would think you'd want it probably 3. You wouldn't want 1 person, and you wouldn't want, you could have 2, I suppose, and a meeting with the staff, but if you get into subcommittees, you have to post the meetings and have minutes and that kind of thing, so.
That's why they're always kept to 2.
I'm sorry?
That's why they're always kept to 2.
What do you mean, 2?
Because 2 people is not it takes 3 to be a meeting that needs to be publicized.
I don't think so.
No.
Is that not true?
I don't think that's true, Doug,
Once you
unfortunately.
form a subcommittee of 2, it's subject to the open meeting law. If you vote a subcommittee, any voted subcommittee would be 1,
Yeah.
subject to the open meeting law.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Excuse
yeah,
me.
yeah, that's okay, yeah.
I think it'd be
Yes, Bob?
like the one that we're on, the
I know,
CP,
yes, it
with,
could be.
That's where I'm modeling it
with-
from.
With 2 planning board members and then the other people from the old transportation committee.
Yeah,
And our representative would do the reports. They could come to our meetings and
Yeah.
support the recommendations or the reports that our member gives. I don't see where it would be that difficult to do. It would be difficult just to get volunteers to
Right.
serve on that committee.
okay,
The only
well,
thing.
while we're discussing this as a report from Jim. I'm not really to entertain discussing the merits or how we set it up, okay? I'm discussing this as a report. I mean, this is before us as a report. So I'm glad you brought it up. My recommendation would be that we put it on our agenda, a future agenda,
For new
and
business.
see how we want to structure it, and whether we want to do it internally or how we want to do it. Okay? Yeah, Paul?
So I'd like to mention, several months ago, I had a couple of blankets boxes from the former chairman of the Transportation Committee, John Flanagan, who passed away. He gave those to me, and I passed them to Brian for his office upstairs, so there may be some valuable information in there, I don't know. We did talk about it, but we never had a follow-up on it, but you may want to look at the information in there, because that comes from the chairman of that committee.
Okay. All right. Now, other committee,
Well, I just wanted to follow up about a subcommittee. I thought that the local comprehensive planning committee was a subcommittee of this board.
It is.
Okay,
It
then,
is.
that's where I got the idea from, and then it was pointed out that we didn't have subcommittees, so I might be confused on that point. Because I was really modeling it after the year or so that we've been dealing with the local comprehensive plan, and we meet with all these other boards. We've met with the hospitals, we've met with the oceanographic institutions, education. We bring all that information back and we write plans, and I just thought, why couldn't a subcommittee of the planning board on transportation, I think we have 3 people that are not part of this board that are eager to work on it and go out and do some of the work. Why couldn't we do it the same thing? And that's where it's coming from.
okay.
If I could just help out a little bit here.
Yep.
The distinction for that combined committees is that you have 2 members of the planning board, the local planning committee. You serve as a local planning committee. You have 2 members of another standing committee, which is the EDIC, which actually is a corporation, and 2 members of the board of selectmen. So you have some standing committees. Now, if you want to invite, on your model, let's just say the local planning committee, which is this 7-member board, wants to have another break-off subcommittee with regards to transportation, you could do that. And if you want to invite others to participate in your committee actions at the subcommittee level, that's okay. But there won't be any votes, there wouldn't be anything of that nature that there wouldn't be any official appointments, in other words. So they would come and work with the local planning committee, see what I'm saying?
And everything would have to come forward and be approved by this board.
Correct.
And that's what I was pointing out.
That's
that-
where the Jim was coming from.
Okay. All right. Yes, Paul?
If I remember correctly, last fall, the Board of Selectmen had an advertisement for a Transportation Committee, but I don't believe there was any takers due to the difficulty with the last committee. So I don't know what they're thinking. They may be thinking of doing something similar. We may want to just confirm that, so we're not
I have actually talked to them.
doing.
The old transportation committee.
I'm talking
I thought
about
it's the selectmen, okay.
Board of Selectmen had an advertisement, but I believe there was no takers. So I don't know if they've tabled it, or whether they want to go forward with it. We may want to just coordinate with them. I think it makes sense to have it as part of the planning board, frankly.
Yeah, okay. All right, so maybe Brian could do that, just ask the selectmen
Check with Board of
if they've
Selectmen
done
regarding
anything,
transportation committee. Got it.
or what their position is on.
Put it on a future
Actually, I
agenda.
think it's called the Transportation Commission.
Okay.
Okay. All right, other committee reports. Okay, I have one from the Community Preservation Committee. We will be entertaining comments from the public on the new interpretation of, not interpretation, but the new revision of the Community Preservation Act concerning recreation. And it's been expanded, and so we will be asking for comments from people who are in the recreation business in our town and who participate in it, and so that we can come up with some guidelines for ourselves when we entertain recreation proposals. That's all I have on that. Okay, no more committee reports, new business.
Right now, on my list, I have sober houses and transportation committee.
Right, okay. And one thing also that at some point, and hopefully, I'd like to deal with what I brought up previously about having applicants required to reference the local comprehensive plan when they bring proposals to us. So I would like that to be, would like us to vote on that as to whether that's the way we want to go. I think we've discussed it before. And then if we do go that way, then I think it would be an item on the staff report, one of those little boxes
You want that under new business,
under new business, yeah.
right, a local comprehensive plan.
Reference, applicants
Applicants for what?
Applicants referring to the local comprehensive plan when they bring us a proposal to do something,
An A&R?
anything. I don't care what it is. Well, an A&R, no. Well, it would be NA. It would be non-applicable in that case. We don't have a staff report on A&Rs. Okay, we have them on a lot of other things, on site plan reviews and subdivisions and all that kind of thing.
But now, remember, we couldn't compel an applicant to do anything that the zoning bylaw doesn't authorize you to do.
All right,
So, and we've always told town meeting that the local comprehensive plan is not a regulatory document, and that any changes would have to come back to town meeting for approval. And we've been very consistently telling them that as these local comprehensive plans have updated over the decades. So if you want to have a new item under new business, a new item on your agenda, how you would now ask for this local comprehensive plan to be referenced as during regulatory reviews, that's fine, that's okay, that's good. But I think just so everyone understands, that might have to go back to town meeting for endorsement. There are certain special permits that require a reference back to the local comprehensive permit under the planned residential development. I believe it might also come under scrutiny with the transfer of development rights. But just be sure you know, the local comprehensive plan has always been introduced to town meeting as a non-regulatory document. Doesn't mean it can't change, but you
Yeah.
have to be careful about that. That's all.
okay. Was it done that way for the design review committee?
Yeah, the design review committee, when it first came out, was a totally voluntary, no applications, no fees, none of that. It was something that was set up. You can go see them for some advice. We went back to town meeting. I think Art Calfee has introduced some articles that made it mandatory that we send them a referral, I think it was, I forget exactly what it was, but it always went back to town meeting for whatever it was under the sign code or whatever. It goes back to town meeting.
Okay, it goes back to town meeting. Does it end up in our 240?
Yeah.
It ends up in there?
There's no derived authorities here. Everything's derived from whatever town meeting votes you for that authority.
Okay, so that's what I would like the planning board to do.
Yeah, that's
To
fine.
entertain that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Anything else for new business then? Correspondence, I didn't see any in the folder, Brian?
Oh, I got it back, you had your campaign contributions.
That's being signed by
Yeah, I got
everybody.
it. Okay.
I didn't sign it yet, so don't, I'll sign it before I leave, I'll sign it. And our next meeting will be next week, I believe.
Your next meeting, for sure, we have a joint meeting with the Board of Appeals on the 31st.
Right. I'm quite sure I had on my calendar that we were meeting next week. No?
Okay. I just got back today from California. I don't know what Marlene's put down, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
Let me make sure. Right now, for sure, I know the 31st is on. That's a joint meeting with the Board of Appeals. We're going to go into some roles and responsibilities, more training than anything else, I'm understanding. But
And that's on a Thursday night?
it's a Thursday night, so I don't know
Okay.
if you want to go out 2 nights in a week. That week.
Well, that wouldn't be this coming week, next week, would it?
Next
Or would-
week.
Would it be next week? Yeah, I guess so. All right, well then,
Right.
Well, then-
My understanding was we're having that joint meeting in the middle of your Tuesday night meeting.
if we have a joint meeting, we will not meet on Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay, Jim?
On the joint meeting with the ZBA, I watch and attend a lot of ZBA meetings, and they are right now, and I just have a question for Brian about the appropriateness of whose job it is. The big issue they're bringing is an article to revise the zoning bylaws, that they want to hire a consultant and go out and review the zoning bylaws and come up with revisions. And I just questioned whether that is their job or our job. And I was looking for some guidance. I'm not clear on this, but I would like some guidance.
I've not seen an article to that effect, either for the annual or special town meeting, but ultimately, under the state law, it's the planning board. Right.
On 3 or 4 times, it's been on their agenda, and it's been brought up, and they're bringing it to selectmen, and I was just questioning, I thought it really should come from us and not
I
them.
think my background understanding on that is that they were looking for a source of funds to at least review the existing, the planning board has had this conversation.
And the scope of work, though.
I'm sorry?
Funds are right, but also a scope of work.
All contracts are reviewed and approved and go through the town manager's office. This elected board, all appointed boards, anything that has a source of funds, any contract, any procurements, the chief procurement officer is the town manager. And my understanding is that, and I haven't seen it, I haven't talked to anybody at the Board of Appeals, is that they're looking for some funds to look at this bylaw that has been kind of cobbled together since 1926, and how can we fix it up such that, it's more consistent, it gets rid of archaic or obsolete language, and we still allow natural ice harvesting activities in our agricultural zones, truck farms, things that were put in back in 1947. That's my understanding. Ultimately, anything that comes through either procurement-wise or under the procurement laws or zoning, eventually it's this board that passes a recommendation on the town meeting, nobody else. Other boards can study whatever they want. When it comes to a zoning article in front of the town meeting, only this board gives the recommendation.
That's what I thought, but when I hear the discussion is not only, the scope of work is being discussed and in what areas they go and the amount of fees. When you decide how much money you're going to spend on an article and get it approved, you define the scope of work and how big you're going to go.
I don't have any knowledge of that, Jim. I don't watch this show.
Well, it's been publicly discussed and it's coming forward, and I just want to bring it up.
Okay, I'm not aware of it. Under new business, I can, this is still under new
Well, it
business.
should be on the topic for our joint meeting is what I'm saying about whose role it is to work on that scope of work.
Let me discuss, I guess I'll discuss it with Ralph, and we'll set an agenda up for
If
Thursday.
it's appropriate.
It's
Jim,
appropriate.
let's not start any turf wars over
Pardon?
Well, I don't want to. I just thought it was our I just thought it was our
Let's leave
responsibility.
it at that, it is our responsibility, they can look at it whatever they want. But, it's
Yeah,
it's
let
our
me take a
call.
look at we look at the background, and we'll get back to you on what Thursday night's going to entail. My hope for Thursday night is somewhat of more of an educational treatise for both boards about what planning boards do, what zoning boards do. It's a course that's taught, that we are trainers in. Marlene gave you the approval not required module, the subdivision module. I was hoping to do a little bit of that for the Board of Appeals. little bit of special permit variance for the planning board, so everyone understands what these boards' roles and responsibilities are. If there are other issues that are out there, I was hoping for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes at the end of all that to discuss what's going on type of issues.
If the zoning board is running into kinds of problems, maybe with enforcement questions that relate back to archaic sections of the bylaw, that's something they should refer to us anyway, you know.
We find out.
This will be an opportunity for us to vet some of that stuff. Okay. Then that's it for the agenda tonight, so I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
Ralph?